John Cena is the villain.
The greatest moment of his life, I'll just go ahead and say it, is when he announced to the crowd that Bin Laden was dead.
Oh, that was massive.
Do you remember that video?
Yes.
The way he worded it was just so beautiful. We have caught and compromised to a permanent end.
He is
Osama bin Laden. Wait. Hold on. Let me actually. I forgot the best part. He goes, I come out here every night with hustle, loyalty, and respect on my sleeves. Best part was he was wearing a sleeveless shirt.
I don't even think he was wearing a shirt.
You might be right.
I think he was shirtless.
He was shirtless. You're right. He was. Either way, he didn't have sleeves.
Yeah. Well, he usually has armbands that have it. Like no.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is probably the biggest one. I remember that, and that dude is so smart. Like he is actually like super smart.
I don't doubt it. I just thought it was hilarious how he worded it. Caught and compromised to a permanent end. Like, there's no better way of saying killed a guy than that. Great. All right. Well, let's get started then. Okay, we got three topics for you, John, for you to choose for your liking. First, the Selena Zito article on J.D. Vance. Selena Zito, I don't know who she is, but she wrote an article about him in the New York Post. The title was, as you'll remember, How Liberals Turned on J.D. Vance, Working Class Author of Hillbilly Elegy. That title alone is cannon fodder for discussion.
Bonkers.
Sure. Choice number 2, the conspiracy purported by Marsha Blackburn that Anthony Fauci and Mark Zuckerberg are plotting against conservatives. And Joint Jabs Jail, the fact that you can get rewarded with weed if you get a vaccine in Washington State, but you can get rewarded with jail for weed if you live in a place like West Virginia or anywhere that doesn't have it legalized.
I think, okay, last week I said I was going to take 2 of the really good topics, save for Patreon. We're not really doing that this week. So I'm going to say, I think we got to give the people what they want, Chuck. And you know that they want this Zito article on J.D. Vance.
We want it too, to be honest. Let's be real here.
You didn't even have to read the other 2. I was always going to pick that one.
No, it wouldn't be so enticing if not for the title of the article says everything about it and is a complete, retribution or completely against what we've always said. So, okay. This came out June 12th. That would have been yesterday as time of recording because we're recording Sunday. And, John, why don't you just pick apart the headline and then we can get into the article here. And again, I'll remind you and listeners how liberals, big P there, how liberals turned on J.D. Vance. She misspelled it. It's supposed to be John Dammit Vance. Working class author of Hillbilly Elegy. Take it away, young son.
All right. Well, I think it's pretty simple. Literally everybody at home right now who's listening or driving in the car is like screaming. Exactly. They're saying the things that I'm about to say.
Yeah. If we want to, we can pause for a couple seconds here. Just let it out.
Yeah, let it out.
Let it out. 1,000. Maybe I'll put some Zen music in the background so you can really get it. On your Zoom call even.
Yeah, let it all out.
There you go.
Yeah, mute yourself though. Don't make that mistake. Okay.
Maybe also hide your camera too, so it doesn't look like you're just screaming at whatever somebody's saying.
Also, I have to point out, like, if you're listening to us during a Zoom call, like for work, I just want to say you're a true fan.
Yeah, appreciate that a lot.
Like, you're the real one. All right. So anyway, this headline is pretty easy to dissect. First off, we never liked J.D. Vance. The fact is we could never have turned on J.D. Vance because we hated him since he wrote the damn book. Also, I don't think it's just liberals, which is the funny part. I know a lot of conservatives that don't like J.D. Vance, but I get the point of the article is because they like J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is obviously a very conservative person, and liberals do really dislike him. So, okay, I'll give him that. The next one is my favorite part. Working class. Chuck, J.D. Vance is a Yale-educated attorney who runs a hedge fund.
Nothing says working class like venture capitalist.
Right. Okay, Chuck, I'm going to talk about your favorite thing real quick. I know it's going to get you fired up. This is a guy who I don't know any working class person who wants to protect payday loan vendors.
Yeah, again, payday lenders, are people that charge upwards of 400%, 1,000% interest rate on loans. Nothing says let's protect the little guy like that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I think what's important to point out with this article is the author made the argument and based it on very well-known liberals. Let me rephrase that. Liberals within the liberal ecosystem of media. So, for example, they cite a glowing 2016 review from the New York Times. Jennifer Senior, I guess, was the person. I think she's a liberal columnist there. And they also cited Chris Hayes on MSNBC, which is a little surprising coming from him. Apparently, he told his audience that Hillbilly Elegy was a fantastic read. It's really eye-opening. And she also says, for months, the blue check Twitterati could not get enough of him. So basically, this person went on Twitter, was like, oh, liberals like this guy because they found a bunch of people who called themselves liberals but are really detached from society and are looking for an explanation for Trump in 2016. And they saw this book and decided to attach that because that seems like a convenient thing. That's my take of it. But
yeah, I mean, it's an easy excuse. It's the ability for somebody to get almost this feeling of comfort, right? Because at the end of the 2016 election, everybody said how, right? How did Donald Trump win? And J.D. Vance, perfect timing, wrote a book and convinced them that that is how Donald Trump won. He said, you want the people who elected him? Here's Appalachia. And which is hilarious because he can't win just off Appalachia, obviously. But he made it seem like Appalachia was, the reason that Donald Trump became president. So it was an easy way and of course you have very liberal people who are not from Appalachia who want to know how Donald Trump won. And this gives them that. It gives them the ability to place blame, which everybody did after that election.
Oh, yeah. So one thing she says that is true, but we have been talking about this for a long time, is that the media failed to notice from the beginning is that Vance is as much a conservative populist as the people we grew up with. Well, we wouldn't say the people we grew up with because we don't have a good perception of who or what they believe in, because all he does is paint his own picture of it. But the Professor Paul something from Youngstown State said, all you have to do was really read the book. There you go. What a novel thought. It is from the beginning. It is between every line. But I think elites thought because he would occasionally criticize Trump's behavior, he was one of them. So I agree with the first part of that book first part of that quote that you do have to read every line, but he is an elite. That's what people are missing from this. Look, he went to Yale. He ran a hedge fund or a venture capital fund. He is getting $100 million or $100 million? $10 million, excuse me. He's getting $10 million from the co-founder of PayPal. That sounds pretty elite to me. I don't know about you. I mean, it sounds. He went to an elite Ivy League school. He worked at an elite institution. That's pretty elite to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who on a daily basis argues against universal childcare. Like people to have the ability to go out and have childcare so they, can go make a living. No hardworking, even middle-class person is going to say like, man, I love paying for childcare. Like, yeah, well, and his reasoning is super pretentious because that's who he is. His reasoning is like, oh, it's gonna make my kids suffer because you want to know why? He can afford the best in the entire country.
Well, I mean, his reason is, well, I was able to do this, and so should you. I was able to pull myself up by the bootstraps, and so would you.
For the Hillbilly Elegy thing, yes. I'm talking about just childcare in general.
No, but that's what I mean, too. It's like, well, he's saying, well, I can afford childcare because I worked hard enough. It's these other people that aren't. Yeah. And it comes back to this narrative that he is doing a lot, and y'all really need to just kind of read what he puts out there. It's very, very, very... It always gets at the family structure is eroding. The family structure is eroding. That has been a buzzword for very conservative Republican politics for a long time. It was a buzzword when people were opposing gay marriage and opposing gay people in general. It was always, well, what about the family? Think about the family, the destruction of the family. And it's used as an excuse for a lot of this conservative bullshit that him and that the MAGA Republican Party are putting out now. And it's worth mentioning, I don't know that I emphasized this at the beginning, but this is a New York Post article. New York Post is a garbage publication, so let's just be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the broader point is there is this misconception, I think, that because liberal elites attach to this book in the post-2016 world, that means that typical liberals, that people that aren't in these high office towers in New York City or that aren't being bankrolled by a major publication or something, regular everyday liberals thought the same way, and that's beyond the truth. This is the mistake that often gets placed on this. Elite liberals, yes, they loved hillbilly elegy because it provided them a permission structure to resent working class Americans. And it provided them a resource to explain what they all got wrong about the 2016 election. So it's really an excuse mechanism. And now it's no longer in vogue to do that because coming out on the MAGA train, and he's paid for a very premium booker because he's on Tucker Carlson all the time. So now it's not vogue for people who, for example, were praising that before to be doing it again.
Yeah. I mean, J.D. Vance is J.D. Vance, and I'm just so sick of people who don't understand our issues with this book trying to convince us that we should like the person who wrote it. I'm done with it.
Or trying to convince us that we are like him.
Right. That's the other thing is like J.D. Vance and I honestly can't name one thing that we agree on. Like I've never once heard him say something where I'm like, yep. Unless we talk about when he talked about Barack Obama and said he was actually a really good man. I mean,
I think he said something about you take a certain interstate to get from Middletown to where was it in Kentucky?
Jackson,
yeah. It was some interstate. I can't remember which one it was, but I think I looked up at the time it was correct. So I would agree on that.
Okay, I agree. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I've never agreed, besides the Barack Obama thing, I've never agreed with any of his opinions. Factual stuff.
No, I was making a stupid fucking joke. That's all I got. I mean, look, whenever this guy announces,
because he will,
we'll have some stuff. Yeah, he will. And we'll have some stuff loaded to bear for him. But we'll always keep putting our stuff out there because clearly there's more people that need to know how terrible this book is, and they only read the personal narrative part, and they ignored half the book, which was a political manifesto of hatred and bullshit. So we've got to keep highlighting that, I guess. Anyway. Yep. You good on that?
I'm good.
You good? All right, we're good. All right, let's move on. We got some announcements before we get into the main meat of this episode. First of all, new Patreon members. Let's start with that. We got one. John, name it off.
We got Chris. Chris joined this week. We really appreciate it, Chris. Chris was actually asked me how to support us, right? Which, look, I think that's like the nicest thing is like when people are like, how can we support you some way? Which is just, it still blows my mind. But I always think it's like almost like super sweet, right? Like, because you're not used to that. You're not used to that in this type of environment anymore. So it's always nice.
True. So if you do join for the lowest $5, you get a weekly exclusive. This week, we're going to be talking about Dollar General and how we think there should be a unionization movement in Dollar General. Mm-hmm. And we know that you all will identify that. Everybody's been to a Dollar General. It's all throughout Appalachia. It's going to be something, a really interesting discussion. It's actually getting a lot of attention right now as it relates to workers just quitting their jobs because they've been just forced to put up with a bunch of garbage, like crazy hours, short staffs. And so there's getting a lot of attention about that. So we're going to be talking about that. There's a bunch of different stuff on Patreon. We're going to be revamping some of the tiers, I think, pretty soon. We're going to be putting out new exclusives. We're working on Sheep Squatch right now, the Sheep Squatch Cryptid Bonus exclusive. We're also going to be doing one, I think, at some point on old John Brown, who, if you're watching on YouTube, is in the banner behind me.
The other thing that we're doing, I think that this is really cool, Chuck. We're doing a giveaway every single week. All you have to do to enter is go leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, but it has to be a typed review because otherwise we can't see who leaves reviews. So if you type up a review, give us 5 stars. Every week, Chuck and I will pick our favorite reviews. Sometimes we may even have 2 different ones. Favorite reviews, and the winners, we're going to send them stickers and other cool stuff that we have that you just get by leaving a cool review. That's it. It's pretty simple.
Yep. It's nice to go out and do it.
Do it. It's easy. It's fun. Make it fun. Write me a poem. I don't care. It's going to be awesome. I'll probably pick that one. Finally, last bit of housekeeping that we have. We have that Pride shirt still up. It's going to run till the end of June, and we're going to donate 100% of our profits from that shirt. So make sure if you want to buy an Appalachian shirt, you can go buy that one. Maybe you throw a couple more in the cart. I don't know. There's now a contest to see who owns the most Appalachian merch, which I think is great. I think that's a fantastic contest to have. But anyway, we're going to donate 100% of those of the profits that this podcast gets from that shirt. And we're looking forward to helping as many people in the LGBTQ plus community as we can.
Hell yeah. We're not just going to put the rainbow flag on our logo like someone like Dominion Energy does, then they go and overbill ratepayers $300 million.
Yeah, anyway. That's insane.
Anyway, moving right along, John, bringing it back this time to introduce our main subject, Datalacha. It's that time where it's coming back again. Datalacha, where I come up with a random statistic that helps tell the story of Appalachia or just something in general. John tries to guess what it is. We talk about it, leads into our main subject. John, your statistic today, 22.76%.
22.76%. Okay, all right. 22.76%. Leads us into our main topic.
It does.
I'm gonna make a real guess this time.
Oh God, let it rip. Let it rip.
22.76% is the amount of miners who are unionized.
Incorrect, but good guess.
I figured it's gonna be way higher than that. I just didn't know.
Well, coincidentally, it is probably the percentage correct I got on my evidence final in law school, but more importantly,
been there.
It is 22.76%. That's how much higher weekly pay is on average for union workers as opposed to non-union workers in this country. Not just Appalachia, but in this country. Appalachia is a little bit harder to get that data. I don't have it. I'm sorry. But that tells you how important it is to be a union worker. 22%, man, that's a lot of money. Think about how much you make per week right now. Add about 23% onto that. That's pretty damn good. I'll tell you that. It's a huge difference, and so that's why unions are important. And that does bring us into our topic this week, John. We're talking about the UMWA strike, the United Mine Workers America strike in Appalachian, Alabama. Now, to give some acknowledgments to this, and then we'll get into some background of it, the national media has barely touched this at all. But a few people in particular have been beating the drum with it for a while. I wanted to highlight all these people, organizations are on Twitter. They're all putting out stories. They're sharing their stories of the strike. Kim Kelly, who's an independent journalist who's been covering the hell out of this, please give her a follow. I'll link her in the show notes to her Twitter bio. She's been doing a lot on this. Hayden Wright, who is actually, I think she might be the wife of one of the coal miners. I'm not sure, but she works with the auxiliary who's running the strike pantry. It's helping get miners and their families food during the strike, and has been posting a lot of videos and a lot of stuff that just is getting picked up by the media. And then the Valley Labor Report, which is I believe a radio show down in Alabama that's been focusing on labor. They've also been covering this a lot. I wanted to give credit to them because they've been doing a lot of good work on that. So strikes used to be big news, but the media spent more time last week, for example, covering the cicadas on Joe Biden's plane than this. And I will also say that we acknowledge we have not talked about this either, and I'm a little ashamed of us for not doing it. I'm actually kind of kicking myself for not talking about it anymore. But we're doing it now, and it's heating up. And so to give you all some background, this is a strike against a company, a coal company, Warrior Met Coal, and it started at the beginning of April, John. So this was, let's see, it is June. It's over 2 months now. It's a long time. It's more than 1,100 workers out of, I believe, a total of 1,400. And it's the first coal mining strike in Alabama in 4 decades. That's incredibly significant.
Yeah, I didn't even know that whenever we first thought about doing this topic. Well, we didn't really think about doing this topic. This topic made us do this topic. But I didn't know that. I thought it's extremely interesting though, because it tells you, because a lot of the things that people tend to think about when it comes to these things, it's like, oh, now that we've progressed into the future, working environments are getting better, needs for strikes are going down. But that's not true. As you see with teachers and now miners, like things are getting perpetually worse, because if you remember back in the day, we can argue all day long if whether or not their environment was better, but they were being paid significantly more when it comes to inflation rates. So there was actually a reason still maybe to put up with things a little bit more, but that's not the case anymore. These coal miners, they're barely making ends meet. Plus they're having to fight for a better environment, which is pretty tough when you're mining coal. I mean, you got to make sure that you're being treated correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the context of just the coal industry in general makes it even more difficult, because we've talked about before, coal as a resource is on the decline. Lots of companies went into bankruptcy, including partially this company, which I'll get into in a second. And so it makes it a lot more difficult in the industry, and it creates a lot more tensions between companies and employees, between miners and the corporate executives, because the writing is kind of on the wall for coal in the long-term future as it begins to fade out as a viable resource and a clean resource. But to give you all some background, because I think this is really important, Warrior Met Coal, that's the company. It was actually formed in 2016 because of a bankruptcy, shocker, of a coal company called Walter Energy. So there's massive layoffs that happened because of this. So after the company was bought by Warrior Met, the executives promised to rehire most of the employees back on the condition they accept what's called a subpar contract. And as Kim Kelly puts it in one of her articles, which I believe is very apropos, is subpar is a very generous way of characterizing it. These miners took cuts in their pay. They took major cuts in insurance, and a ton of other things in order to help the company get out of bankruptcy. So they're helping this company recover because they came on hard financial times. To put that in perspective, they took, I believe, $6 an hour pay cut. So
wow,
a little fast math here. Maybe I can try it in my head. Let's say you work a 40-hour week, which they work more than that almost always. I think that's $240 a week. Am I right? Is that the right math?
Yes.
It's about $1,000 a month. That's a lot of money. And so I think they were making $28 an hour or something like that. They went down to $22. That's a huge, huge dent into your income. They had longer work weeks. In addition to that, lost their overtime compensation. So they're working overtime, not getting paid for it. And John, big shocker here, upper management received bonuses. You betcha. And something else that's interesting, I'll link to the video of this. They were interviewing miners. When this new company bought it and took over, the conditions just in general were terrible. They would get penalized for doing things like going to the doctor because they were taking time off of work. It was just a much more hostile environment. They had like a 3-strike policy or something like that. They had to work every holiday except for, I think, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter maybe, whereas they got a lot of other holidays off beforehand. Anyway, important thing you need to know, CEO made $4 million in 2019. Company had net revenues of $302 million in income in 2019, yet they couldn't find a way to scrape out any money for these miners. Now, granted, they'd reported a little bit of a loss in 2020, but we're still doing good comparatively. last thing you need to know, after a week of negotiations, because they went on strike on April 1st, UMWA and the company came to a tentative agreement. It was a shitty one. It was a $1.50 raise for the next 5 years, a $1.50 an hour raise. But the membership voted overwhelmingly to reject it. So that is where we are right now. There's more details we'll get into later, but I kind of want your initial thoughts on this. Because I've got some thoughts, obviously, of strikes in general, but just based on all this information, sadly, it's not that surprising what the company's doing.
No, I mean, this isn't... I know it is different, but when you talk about the CEO getting, he made $4 million in 2019, but then you also talk about how, they're always getting bonuses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw, but in the news recently...
Well, that included bonuses, by the way, just to clarify.
Oh, okay. Well, then you didn't get enough. No, I'm just kidding. When it comes to these types of things, I don't know if you heard recently, Chipotle, they raised their minimum wage to $15, and then they raised everything by like 27 cents, I think is what it was on the menu, which is not substantial, right? But two, they blame the workers getting a $15 an hour because of that raise. But in actuality, they doubled the pay of the CEO.
Well, he was working really hard, John. He was working really hard to crunch those numbers and figure out how much more do we got to charge people to give these goddamn employees their $15 a fucking hour. So, yeah, I mean, it seems justified to me. No, fuck that shit. How much more could they have paid them if they didn't give the, double the salary of a
and
CEO?
We're talking, I mean, it was like an $8 million raise. I mean, it wasn't like he doesn't make any. I mean, I think it went from 8 to 16 is what it was. I mean, it was insane.
Jesus. Well, he worked really hard.
But anyway, back to I just want to point that out because it just reminded me of that. Back to the miners. So this is not something that is unique, right? Which is sad. Because you would hope that this is unique, but it's not, unfortunately. This is one of those things, too. I'm always shocked at the bravery of these people. Like, that is what always shocks me. Like, for people to go, on strike, because it's scary. Like, you don't know when you're going to be able to feed you're not going to get money to feed your family. You're going to have to tap into savings. No. But you're doing it because you know.
Don't get paid.
Right. Like there's no income coming in, right? And you may be the only income. So there's two options. One, you continue to work at at this terrible environment that you're trying to fight against or for terrible wages that you're trying to get raised. Or two, you're a scab. Like that's it. Those are the two options. It sucks.
It does. It's something that it's not easy to do. Nobody wants to go on strike. It's not a fun time. You're deliberately foregoing money. And this has been over 2 months for these miners. So they haven't gotten a paycheck in 2 months. Now, UMWA has an active strike fund, so members can draw biweekly checks of about $650 if they stay on the picket line for 16 hours a week at a minimum. But to give you some perspective, this pales in a comparison to roughly the $1,760 they would get every 2 weeks. So, I mean, it is not financially beneficial. You're probably right. A lot of these families, it very well could be their only source of income. I know when my dad was on strike, it was our only source of income was his paycheck. So my mom had to get a part-time job at Coldwater Creek, and it sucks. It's horrible, and you don't want to do that to your family. It feels terrible, but it's also the principle of for this to work, for strikes to work, it has to be collective. It can't, and if one cog falls out, the whole thing can come down. And you saw how effective this was to some extent. How it was effective. You saw how important it was in was it 2018 when the teachers had their strike in West Virginia?
Yes, it was.
All 55 counties.
Yes.
Every single county authorized that because it was important that all 55 be represented and all 55 be there because it needed to be united. And that's what's so important about strikes, but it also also collective suffering. It's terrible, and it's because a lot of times these companies are greedy. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, I mean that is what it is. I mean, it's greed, man. Like it's the ability for somebody to essentially watch others work and get paid to do it. Like that's it. Like, that's what this is. And not only to get paid for it, but to get paid extremely well for it, to where you could retire and never have to work again. But these guys are fucking working 50 years of their lives to ensure that they can continue to make enough money to live.
Absolutely. And so to give you a little bit of, I guess, some background on the environment that this is all kind of around, I think this is important to mention because, like I said, when a worker goes on strike, your whole family goes on strike. But there are some people in the community that I do want to shout out that are really doing a lot of important work. I mentioned Hayden Wright from earlier, who was helping run the UMWA auxiliary in Alabama, where they are, and they're basically running a strike pantry. So they're taking donations of food to give out to the families of the miners in order to, help feed them, help defray the cost because they're not getting paid. It's very community driven, and in fact, I'll put a link to the strike fund. So if you want to contribute to it, that they're running down there, I know that they've been doing a lot of really good work, especially Valley Labor Report with generating money for that. So there's a lot of support, but it takes a village, because these companies are, even though it's a company that came out of bankruptcy, they're still strong companies and they still have a lot of power over the workers. So it really is a community effort in order to even have a foothold against companies like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is, oh man, I hate this. Like,
you mentioned the word scabs, which is a gross word because it's a gross thing. And for people that aren't familiar with that union jargon terminology, it's people that come in to work the jobs of the union workers when the union workers are on strike. So when you'll see a lot of these miners, they're outside of the mines that they work in, picketing, and you see a bunch of trucks drive in and you see the miners yelling at them. Those are the people that are basically stealing their job, that are working those non-union wages because it helps the company keep afloat. Because if the company doesn't pay if the company doesn't pay scabs, then they're going to go out of business and they have to actually compromise with the union. But they pay scabs so that they can keep continuing paying low wages because they know somebody will come in and work it. And that's what prolongs strikes, quite frankly. And I'll share a quick story because this sucks and scabs is a kind name for them. I remember being on the picket line with my dad in 2006, I think, 2006. And that's the first time I learned what a scab was, because we were right outside of the plant and there'd be people driving in and all the union guys would be hollering at him, yelling at him, cussing at him and stuff. And I was like, Dad, like, why are they doing that? And he's like, because those people are coming to take our jobs. And it was hard to watch because it was like, there was a look of anger, like this boiling blood anger from my dad, but also just this sort of demoralizing thing of these people are coming to take the job that I get paid for to support my family. And I am pissed at them and it's fucked up. And this is bullshit. And that I will never forget that because it just made me so mad at these people. And, they'll take pictures of them and put them up on walls to show people these are the people that are coming and stealing our jobs. These are the anti-union busters, really, that are coming and stealing our job and stealing our work. And I wanted to point that out because it is really important to remember that it is not just the company that does things that are bad and gets away with it. It takes people, wherever they come from, doesn't matter. It takes people to come in and actually take those jobs and work for the company and do their bidding in order to make it successful for the company to continue non-negotiating with the union.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, too. It's like, I always feel a little bad because I understand that people need jobs, and it is hard to essentially be like, well, I have to walk away and strike, and I get that. I think the idea, though, is just like, if they're going on strike, maybe you don't come and try and take the job. I think that's what makes you a scab more than even just staying on, like while somebody else is striking.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, because there are people that stay on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some people have to. They may not have a savings. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times too, it's like there are people who are not against what's going on, like not against what they're doing, but they just don't have the ability to do it because they don't have the savings or whatever.
I mean, I would argue that probably most people on that picket line probably don't have the ability to do that either.
Well, yeah,
And
that's fair too.
Like, I don't
that's
have
fair
any
too.
love lost for that, because that's crossing a picket line. To me, that's just unconscionable thing to do.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to play devil's advocate.
That's fair. I mean, it's we're straight shooters on this show. We present all sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too. Like, you're right.
It's hard. It's not.
Yeah, it's hard, but you shouldn't. These are obviously still your. These are the people that are fighting. They're really fighting for you, because I mean, if they get something, you're going to get something. So.
Yeah, it ultimately harms everybody. But it is a hard, well, like we said, it's a hard decision, because nobody wants to go on strike. Nobody wants to say, fuck my paycheck for however long, right? And thank God the UMWA does have a strike fund that they can at least give them something. But it's hard.
That's true.
It's hard.
Yeah, and that's good. That part, I think, is what makes these things possible. It's the strike fund. It's not, obviously it's not enough to sustain people, but it is something.
Yeah. And that's why, like, the strike pantry too is really important with getting food to people. But yeah, and I think, if I recall, the steelworkers, my dad was on strike, had a strike fund, and they would do things like they wouldn't get as many grocery donations, but they buy up a bunch of like Kroger gift cards and give them out to families of steelworkers who are on strike, so that we could, it wasn't like giving you straight cash, but you could like buy groceries, keep the lights on and everything. But it sucks. It's shitty. And this is the struggle this is the kind of struggle that has been woven throughout Appalachia's history, as we know. From the battle to Blair Mountain to Harlan County coal mine wars to everything in between. And it's because, like, workers get treated terribly by the corporate power, and it takes everybody to push back against that and get something. And so, and a lot of times it's not fair. And, the reality is, sadly, is that these miners may have to accept something below what they were paid before. They may have to do that, which is terrible, but it just shows you like how important it is that they even have a union, because if they didn't, they would probably be paid even less. They would be forced to either go to work or they would be fired, and everything, and then the corporate executives would be paid anymore. Something you mentioned before, but I think is important, is when it comes to the history of Appalachian labor, as you well know, there's a lot of violence associated with it. And you mentioned this earlier. There's been footage, and I can link to that as well. I'm gonna shitload of links this time.
So many links
of trucks driving into UMWA leaders, mine worker leaders.
Insane. Look, this is, and here's the thing: we live in a different age now, Chuck. Like, we know about the violence in the past, right? But we don't have video evidence of a lot of it. Right? Like, we may have some photos here and there, but we don't really have much.
Yeah, there weren't any miners in 1910s pulling out their smartphone and
right. Like, nobody pulled out their iPhone. But that's not the case anymore. And so, I mean, it's a lot easier to document these things. And I will say the media did a terrible job covering this. Yeah. Absolutely. It was pitiful. The people that you named did a great job, but the actual national media, pitiful. They should be ashamed.
Still.
Because... and they're still not, yeah. And even when that video came out of the guy driving through, still no coverage.
Yeah, you got some like local attention, which I think the locals like
right,
AO.com, they're finally getting onto it. But yeah, so there's one video of a truck literally driving into a worker, almost knocking him down. There's another one. It's actually drone footage because the union, I think, got a drone so they could record some of this and they could look at the activity going on. There's another one, a black truck clearly driving through, knocking people over. One guy had like a torn meniscus because one of the trucks drove and hit something that caused it to ricochet against his leg and like tore a muscle in his leg. I believe your meniscus is your leg, right?
Yeah.
Sure. To tore that, and it's a wonder that there hasn't been any more injuries. A wonder people weren't sent to the hospital or killed. But this is what they do. It's all intimidation. It's intimidation. It's
That's
a
what it
fuck
is.
you. It's a fuck you intimidation. It's fuck you for wanting to fight for yourself, and you shouldn't be doing this. And make no mistake, the company knows about all this, and I absolutely agree with it. But they know that
Yeah, they love it. They love it.
Mm-hmm. They know that like they get this thing hot and people will start caving, or at least they think. These miners, though, man, they are resilient as fuck.
Yeah, my God. I've always said it. Like, even though a lot of the times, like, we may disagree with the actual, option to mine when there are so many other options, there's no doubt that those dudes are like the hardest workers and they're relentless. Like, I would never want to get into a bar fight with them because they would not stop punching you in the face.
I would, and I would never want to get in a mine. I'll be honest. I'd never.
No, I
wouldn't
either.
So fucking hard work.
I can never. I couldn't do it, and that's why I look at these guys. I'm like, why are they not some of the most paid people in the country?
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the things before like the bankruptcy and everything. They were, I believe the average pay was something like 70 or 80,000 a year. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me.
I think it should be even higher.
I absolutely agree. But I mean, it's good money for rural
Alabama.
It's great
money. It's great money, but
you
still,
think like a huge percentage of pay cut gone for that. I mean, and these people are putting it on their bodies too. I mean, that's the thing. Is like,
oh my God, black lung even
lung, and just like the muscular. Anyway, we won't get on all that, but just like that's hard grinding work, and being a miner right now is tough, just because the reality is that it gets harder as the industry gets more contracted, and it's harder to make money off coal, and it's a tough. Miners have never had it easy, but I don't think it's ever been harder to be a coal miner than it is right now. And while you and I are obviously very supportive of clean energy, we also want a real legitimate transition away from coal that honors coal miners' work and puts them on a path where they can be financially successful, and that we won't get into that. I know we talked about it before, but anyway, the last thing I'll add to this is the local police have showed very little interest. In fact, they've actually tried to arrest victims and miners that were marching. So it's always interesting when you talk about police, but man, fuck them for this. This is bullshit.
Yeah, this man, and that's the problem too. Is like we don't have company towns anymore, but we still have company towns. Like, if you get what I'm saying, right?
No
like,
shit, that's true.
And so that's the shitty part. Like, for instance, if our hometown, Chuck, like Parkersburg, right? People who used to talk out about DuPont, for instance, they were shunned. Mm-hmm. And so I can only imagine what these, in this small town where, it's not a huge population, people see these as like really good paying jobs already. So why are you fighting it? It's a lot like what teachers went through. And it's one of those things like that's what makes it even harder to do this. It's like you're getting shit on from the left and the right.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. Well, we're going to keep an eye on this. We're going to keep track of it. Like I said, I'll put a bunch of those links down if you want to support the miners, and if you want to learn more about it and just see kind of the abuse that they've had to take. It's bad. It is bad. But we're going to keep on this subject. We wanted to talk about it because it's super important and it's not getting enough coverage. So make sure you share this episode with your friends and talk to it about people, and share it on social media. Let's get it some attention. And it doesn't have to be this episode. Some of the links too. We're not going to be totally self-promoting, but yeah, I think it's important, and it's something that these people really deserve. They deserve a lot of support. They deserve the respect of an employer that has relied on them to make riches and then shun them. So it's terrible.
100%.
Moving on to our final segment, as always, the beef portion of this. The Dietrich Bonhoeffer of beef, they call him, because he's been sticking beef in the mouth of fascists since the day he was born, ladies and gentlemen. Beef with Big John. If anybody gets that reference, hopefully they will appreciate it. I don't know.
If you get that reference, please comment on one of our posts telling Chuck that you get the reference. It will make him sleep better at night. I promise.
I mean,
you.
it's a compliment. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was one of the people leading the Black Hand movement against Adolf Hitler or something. I don't know if it was Black Hand. That's probably not right. but something like that. Anyway,
That's pretty cool. Anyway, great compliment.
cool guy. Look him up. German Lutheran pastor. There you go.
Before going into beef real quick, I do want to remind everyone, if you're a Patreon member, real quick, I think this is important. That's why I'm doing it at the top of my beef. We're doing a Q&A this Thursday. Patreon exclusive. Only our Patreon members can be there. It's going to be really cool. We did like a little like mini one back before and people loved it. We think this one's going to be even better. If you want to check it out, patreon.com/appodlatchet. It's $5 or whatever you want to pledge per month, and you can be a part of it too. We're going to host more live events than we ever have before. That's going to be our goal going forward, and we think it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, on to the prime rib of this beef. Okay.
Oh, wow.
All right, Chuck. I'm going to make this a podcast-specific beast. It's going to be beastly, but beef, okay? Mm-hmm. I am sick and tired of people thinking that you and I are trying to talk for all of Appalachia, as if that's even possible.
This is a timeless beef.
I am so, and it's gotten worse, right? As we've grown, it continues to kind of get worse, you know. And I figure why not nip in the bud right here, right? Here's the thing. Chuck and I, we don't speak for all of Appalachia. We know that. Our views are not the same as everybody's, but that's the point. The point is that we want people to know that Appalachia isn't this like one-dimensional place. It's a unique place with different thoughts and feelings and morals and ideas. That's exactly why we created this podcast. And it's not the fact that like we're on the liberal side that matters. The thing that matters here is that we want people from Appalachia to be notarized, to have notary. We want people from Appalachia to have a place. Yeah, I know.
We want to notarize them. So
I know.
Notary publics here.
I need a notary. Actually, I do need a notary.
What we're really trying to say is we really need a notary public. So.
Yeah, I do. We also need somebody to design some stuff, but more on that later. Anyway, we want Appalachians to feel like this is at least a place that they can come and say, man, there's a lot of cool shit going on, and these two guys are covering it. Our goal is not to speak for all of Appalachia. It's to be a voice in Appalachia, because there's a lot of voices, believe it or not.
Shocker.
And it's not to be the end-all, be-all, right? But it is an outlet for people to go, you know what? I was wrong about Appalachia. And that every time we hear that, Chuck, that's it. Boom. That's why we created the podcast right there. Because we get that a lot. Like people are like, wait a second. I thought this about Appalachia. Now you guys are saying this? I was wrong. What? Yeah, exactly. That's them. That live video right there. Reenactment. Put reenactment down on the video when you do that. Because that's exactly what it looks like. And that's why we created this damn podcast. Not to be the voice of Appalachia. Although many people would argue that our voices have become stronger in Appalachia, which is exactly what we wanted, obviously, but we're not the voice of Appalachia.
Yeah, I mean, I've been taking voice lessons
We've been taking voice lessons since we started.
All the time, yeah. I think it's a pretty ironic thing, because one of the things that we have preached a lot on this show is to avoid generalizations about Appalachia, about the region, and not to rely on monolithic voices or preconceived notions, and to, what we do is we provide a voice that we felt was not being provided or was not heard from, because we have opinions that I think a lot of people agree with, so we're not necessarily speaking for them. So, I don't know, I just thought it was kind of funny. Anyway, fuck those people.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, people get mad, right? Because we do express opinions that are, on the left side. Like, we fully understand that and we get that, right? And that may not be always the norm in Appalachia. That's cool. But the thing is, it provides a different voice for people to listen to and to agree with and to even debate, right? It's not supposed to be the end-all, be-all. That's my point here. Stop this whole... And these people aren't even listening, so I don't even know why I'm beefing. But I just got to talk about these people because I'm so sick of it.
Anyway, well, look, this is going to be one of those beefs where it's, it's timeless. It's like a fine porterhouse, aged well and will be good.
Cooked perfectly.
It home and cook perfectly, it'll be good if you take it home and put it in your fridge for a little bit, or maybe you don't cook it, maybe you freeze it. I don't know.
Oh, freeze that shit. Save it for later, but I would not recommend that, Chuck. I would not recommend that.
I wouldn't recommend it either. I'm not a chef, though, and I don't even watch the Food Network, but here we go. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Check out all of our links. Check out our website. It's got a lot of cool stuff on there, including us and all of our episodes. So you can find us on there. You can find a transcript of this episode on there, too. Check it out. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you again next week.